Yeah, what's it got?
Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Colin Paul of the Town Park here. Thank you for coming along. Thank you, councillors. There's a great turnout of councillors as well, which is good to see. Just a reminder, although this is a meeting in public, specifically this was a meeting arranged for councillors to ask serious questions about the impact of the review of policing in Suffolk as far as Haverhill Town is concerned. So we do already have quite a few questions. If we do run out of questions, the opportunity for the public to ask questions will then arise, but we have a fairly limited time, so we're going to keep the structure fairly tight. I'd like to welcome Tim Passmore, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner for Suffolk, and also Superintendent Andrew Mason, who is the Western Area
that sounds a bit correct.
So, operational side, Superintendent, obviously the more strategic side from Tim. So, we'll start off, we have some questions. I think the first question is from Councillor Pat Handler.
Yeah, Councillor Pat Handler, Haverhill East Town Councillor.
Yep.
Thanks for coming, Tim. Who will be the local policing commander for Haverhill? Please. When will they be based, and what area will they be expected to command under the new plans?
Right. Thank you very much for the question. I'll get an answer around that. Andrew to answer that directly. Sorry. First of all, thank you very much for asking us over here and having the opportunity to have a really good dialogue. That's absolutely crucial. I know you don't want to talk, so you're not going to get one. That's what I said. But I just want to explain to everybody how the system works, because people are not necessarily quite up to date with that. As Police and Crime Commissioner there, I'm elected to represent your views. You are the taxpayers. You are the people who, if you like, pay in businesses for policing, okay? And my job there is to hold the constabulary to account, to make sure that policing is done efficiently and effectively, as set out in the legislation. And that's really, really important we understand that. I can't interfere in operational matters, as set out in the legislation. And there are obvious reasons for that. You couldn't have some elected official, be it you or me or anyone else, going around telling the Chief Constable, I don't like that person, so he wants to arrest him and that sort of thing. So that safeguard is there, operational independence. So I'm going to get Andrew to answer that question. But the whole point of this is, having replaced the police authority, and it's a lot cheaper and quicker for making decisions in the old system, that is a fact. If there are views, you do need to get in touch if you're not getting the answers, and then I will ask them. So when it comes to something like that question, who is your area commander, and some details about that, I'm going to hand that one over to Andrew. But I just want everybody to understand it's not me avoiding the question. That is what the role is, okay? But we do it together, I'm sure you will.
Well, thanks very much, and thanks for having me back here again. I recognise some faces when I used to be the inspector to answer your question for Haverhill, so it's good to see some of you again. And I remember having one or two very nice meals in this very cafe, so it's almost great to be back. I'm sad it's closed today because I was going to have lunch before. To answer your question, Inspector Danny Cooper is going to be your new inspector from the 4th of April, and Inspector Peter Ferry is moving on to work from Bury St Edmunds. As you know, that's quite a regular thing with moving inspectors, and I was one of those that moved on as well when I went into it. So Danny will be based covering two areas, here and Sudbury. For those of you that are old enough for me, it's like winding the clock back, because there used to be someone looking after both those two together, and they were divisional and sub-divisional, so Sudbury and Haverhill working together again. Danny will be working predominantly between the hours of, it's a weekday work, so the good news is that where Pete has to go and do duty inspector work, that's no longer the case, so he's 100% focused on doing stuff in the two towers. So to answer your question, I know Danny really well, known him for a long while. He's an experienced inspector. He's been an inspector for 4 or 5 years now, and he's really capable, and I'm sure he'll want to come and talk to town council his first opportunity.
Somebody's got a second question.
Okay. Mine comes in two parts. The first one is, what will the exact staffing numbers be for Haverhill response, and how has this changed? And the second part to that question is that we were very fortunate 2 or 3 years ago to have a hub that was furnished down at the police station for victims of abuse, domestic abuse. we had an officer that was trained and skilled to deal with such victims. It appears not to be in any of the documentation about whether that's going to be retained and whether in fact we're going to have someone with those skills. This is a concern. I'm a director of the Women's Refuge in Bury, and we've talked about the police cutbacks and how that can affect people being able to have access to a good service. So to me it's crucial that even if it needs resourcing outside of what we've already agreed, that remains in Haverhill.
Okay, Neville, thank you very much for that question. I'm glad you've raised the issue of domestic abuse. As you may be aware, that is something I personally take extremely seriously. We have put, actually I can say, over £1 million towards dealing with domestic abuse through our crime disorder and reduction grants. That is not from the constabulary, that is from me. And you may be aware that we've had extensive research done on the victims' perceptions of domestic abuse, the biggest piece of research ever done anywhere in the country on that. And there is a lot to do and a lot to put right, and there are lessons there for all agencies throughout the criminal justice system, including police and social services. I'm hugely concerned that the effects, damaging effects on children, if they're brought up in an atmosphere like that, we know they're highly likely to be perpetrators in the future. We've got the new independent domestic violence advice service. That is at the cost of £1.2 million. I commissioned that. That wasn't being done. Previously, there was one advisor for the whole county. There are now additional 8. So that's what's being done. We're just about to sign off on a major training programme. I'm about to do that. That will cost probably £50,000 to £60,000 to make sure that a much larger number of officers and special constables are fully trained and equipped to deal with the damaging effects of domestic abuse, be it violent, coercion, whatever it happens to be, all the manifestations it has. As regards the specific particular facility here in Haverhill, I visited it last year. I do often come down to Haverhill. Nobody has told me that's been closed down, and if it is, I will get that reversed, because that's not going to happen. Dealing with domestic abuse is absolutely crucial. It's a long-term investment, and I'm not going to come here and have things like that happen. So I can absolutely assure you we're right behind you. Could I just mention, if there are other areas that you need help for, women's refuge or whatever it is, we do have this extensive pot of money, £700,000 per year for crime disorder reduction grants that I have told.
I've just spent it for you.
Yeah. Can't give it to you all. No, but seriously, that is something that could have gone, all right? We could have got rid of that completely, but I took a decision soon after it was elected, we're going to keep that. That helps all sorts of voluntary groups, youth groups, people with mental health problems, and of course dealing with domestic abuse. So I absolutely want to reassure you that is at the very top of the list, and I think our track record of what we're trying to do to confront it is second to none. As regards to that particular facility in Haverhill, leave it with me.
Yeah,
it's not.
Because since Will's gone, Will was the person,
Yeah.
then we had somebody else that went on long-term sick,
Yeah.
and we seem, I've never been advised that there's been another person that has stepped into that position.
No, I can answer that specific question. You had 2 parts question. The first one around response
The numbers,
staffing.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no change in that.
No change at
Okay, so you currently at the moment each team has a sergeant and 4 constables on it. In the new model, each team will have a sergeant and 4 constables, so there's no change. Regarding the DV room, I just walked through the police station. It's still there, it's still being used. There is no plans to get rid of it. Okay, you had Will Wright, and I accept he had to move on, but you've got Lawrence Allen at the moment. He's back at work and doing that job. So he did have a period of sickness for his knee, but he is back at work and doing that domestic violence work. And there is no plans under the new model to change that in any way, and the safe enablement team is still going to do that function.
Okay, thank you very much.
I know you say I always say that, but actually it's all good news. There's no change.
Thank you.
Okay, third question.
Thank you very much. It's Andrew Bramwell, Haverhill Council for Haverhill West. Third question is, what will the exact staffing numbers, sergeants, constables and PSOs, be for Haverhill Town and the Haverhill Rural SNT? Thank you very much.
This one for you.
Right, this is going to sound like I'm sloping the question, but I'm not. And it's written with legal reasons for that. At the moment, the constabulary is not announcing the exact numbers of staff for these community support officers on safe enablement teams. And I'll explain why that is. It's not because we're being difficult, but we'll tell you as soon as we can in the near future. But in order for us to reduce the number of police community support officers, they have to be placed at risk of redundancy. I'm sure people who will understand that then invokes a significant piece of legislation around HR, and a process is going on at the moment of selecting those people who are going to retain in the organisation, and some that rather leave voluntarily or get another job somewhere else. So if I said those numbers, then it would give an indication to some people about whether or not they're going to retain their job, and I would effectively breach the HR legislation. So I'm not to open the question. What we've, as an organisation, we've given them an undertaking that we will give all those figures out to people like inquiring people like yourself, or anybody who wants to know, as soon as we've told the staff, and that will be before the 4th of April. So if you're okay with it, what I'll do is I'll take that away, and the minute I know, I'll email Colin and perhaps he can distribute them for you. But please don't think you will still have a safer neighbourhood team. The numbers I think are still going to be quite good, probably better than you expect. But I'm not prepared to kind of tell you now, because those people who are in jobs at risk are going to have to breach their HR law, and that's going to cause all sorts of.
I'll just add one other thing for that, in a wider sense. As a result of the local policing review and the revision of the news, the very good news we had about the reduction in the level of savings we have to make because of the Home Office grant, we still have to make savings, but not to the level that we thought originally. Beginning of December, we thought from our budget of £120 million, because of the reduction in the Home Office grant, we were predicting that we were going to have to save £20 million by March 31st, 2020. That has changed because the Home Office grant is bigger. They revised it, but it was also predicated on putting up the precept by 2% each year, just under. I've taken that decision. It's been supported unanimously by the Police and Crime Panel. So that is going up on average about a penny a day, 366 a year for Band D property, if you want to know those sorts of things. And within that plan, you've got to understand, one of the things the Chief Constable has said to me is we have got to transform and change the balance of the workforce. And what that means is there is a redrawing of the balance of the number of PCSOs and frontline officers. That's really, really important because of the different powers that each have. Now, I have to respect the Chief Constable's professional view. He's been in policing for, 25 or 6 years. Very important he has the right tools, well, obviously with Andrew as well, to do the job. What is good news about this, contrary to what people have said, and somewhat misguided rumours that have been put about, we are actually starting to recruit additional officers again. So the numbers will rise during this coming year by an extra 30, back up to 1,100 frontline officers. Okay, so that is really, really good news. So there's not cutting the number of officers at all. Obviously there's redeployment within the county as a whole, and I can absolutely guarantee Haverhill will get its fair share. I am well aware, having lived in Suffolk all of my life, which is 56 years, how important Haverhill is as a town. I do come here very often, and I know the population is likely to increase up to over 40,000 in the next 12 or 13 years. And as I said before, you pay your taxes and do your dues here, like everybody else. And I get sick and tired of some people who think that Haverhill's stuck out on a limb and doesn't count. Well, it jolly well does. And I'm not just saying that since I was being Commissioner. I've often come to Haverhill when I was working at Shoe Suffolk and other places as well. So I do know Haverhill's important, and I don't think anybody could question that there was not commitment to Haverhill. You will get your fair share of police resources. Can't give the specific numbers for understandable reasons. We will definitely know that before the start of the next financial year, hopefully, as Andrew says, a bit sooner. Overall, put it in the context of Suffolk, 1,100 police officers, there'll be 107 PCSOs, that's the number. At the moment, on the ground, there's about 140, 142, okay? But with that recruitment, the extra resources going into frontline policing, overall, you will be getting your share of policing, and overall there will not be a decline. And please remember, county policing, that is 2/3 of the business. That means there are over 700 officers dedicated to keeping Suffolk safe. The others are in collaborated units with Norfolk or regional and these sorts of things. And we mustn't forget, that is by far and away the biggest part of policing in Suffolk. And as long as I'm here, okay, with the election coming up in May, then I can absolutely assure you Suffolk policing stays as Suffolk County policing. I've always said that, and that was what's happened. So I really want to reassure you on that.
Could I just ask you a question now? So there'll be no police cuts in Haverhill at all? They will stay the same as what they are now?
That's what I'm being told by the Chief Constable. And we'll let you know the exact figures. Redeployment within the various bits of work, more going into investigation, so on, for solving crime. We've got an additional rural crime team being set up in the west. There's an extra roads traffic policing coming in the west. So there is a lot of good news in there. It is not all about cutbacks. It really is not. And it's the changing pattern of crime, and we've got to make sure the Chief Constable and Andrew and other superintendents they've got to have the right tools in the toolbox. You know, things change, you know that. Look how Haverhill's changed in the last 25 years. We've got to reflect.
Thank you, Bertie. Given that answer, and obviously the HR issues, we'll skip number 4, because clearly that's exactly the same answer we're going to get, because that's about numbers and cuts. So if we go to question number 5, please.
Yes, that's me. That's you've actually the town council and mayor. And what will the responsibility be for the Haverhill and rural SMTs? And how is this changed under the new limits? What specifically what they're doing from April onwards? They've always done previously.
Right. Again, I'll get up Andrew to answer the operational side. Just to re-emphasise, it is about transforming what happens. The change of pattern of crime, a lot of it, Betty, is now done online, and we have to be ready to deal with it. I have been absolutely astonished at the change in pattern of crime, even in the last 2 years. That's why we've invested 300,000 quid in a new cybercrime unit. Other forces haven't done that, but we're doing that because we've got to try and be ahead of the game. You look at things like child sexual exploitation, grooming, that case of that chap, I think it was from Berry area, that groomed a 14-year-old girl online, took her up to Lowestoft, raped her and came back. And I've always said to people, how would you feel if it was your daughter, your friend, your relation, so on? You'd be horrified. These sorts of crimes were not nearly as obvious, or perhaps it didn't exist like that a few years ago. Sexting, online bullying, email scams, financial fraud, after your pensions, identity theft, didn't happen before. And that's one of the reasons the change of the local policing review are not just about finance. Obviously we've got to live within our means. I'm sure all of you would do that at home. You don't go and spend it's very easy to spend other people's money, and it's very easy to borrow money and spend it, but you've got to pay it back. And I'm not prepared to sit here and let the constabulary budget, which I'm in charge of, actually overshoot and end up in a financial loss. We think we've got a good plan, recognises the change in the pattern of crime. It is about keeping Suffolk safe, and it is a very safe county, and the transformation is absolutely crucial. We have to confront new forms of crime and deal with them. Really, really do. So I don't know if you've got any other specific...
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a question that sometimes I guess when you're in policing, you naively don't understand sometimes what people not in policing don't understand, if that makes sense. Whatever that means. But what I mean is that there's loads of police officers in Haverhill on a daily basis. You just can't see them because they're not in uniform. So you feel that the people that police in Haverhill are your safer neighbourhood team. But they're the people you see, and they're the people you have relationships with, and they're the people you engage with. So I can understand you sitting there going, well, you know, my safer neighbourhood team is everything, but that's a really, really small part of the policing that's in Haverhill every day. So what I just remind you is, you know, that there will be CID officers moving in around Haverhill all the time with a radio and doing things. You just can't see them. There'll be people dealing with domestic violence. They'll be in plain clothes, because if you're a victim of domestic violence, the last thing you want is a marked car parked outside your house with your neighbours going, oh, what happened down there? So we respond to domestic violence in plain clothes. So as Tim quite rightly said, the way that crime is changing means that we've changed. And you might not see us quite so visibly with all our units, but you're going to have to trust me on this one. They are in Haverhill. We've got a team, sounds very dramatic, we've got a team called the Scorpion team. They're always in Haverhill on a regular basis doing things around preventing drug trafficking and things like that. But if you're going to try and catch a drug trafficker, the last thing you need to be is in uniform. Let's see you coming, okay? So I can give you my assurance, every day we sit and we look and we see where our resources are going. But for good reason, you can't see them. You kind of have to trust me a bit that they're here. But your specific question around safety, it's a really good one. And the way I've kind of crystallised it with my staff, and we get them all together next week to have this very conversation, is that they do the prevention side of things. So their job in the future, if you like, is to prevent as much happening as possible so that my response units don't have to go. So if you look at it like that, they're the bit of the force, if you like, that is really key for prevention. So they've got 4 strands we want them to look at in the future. One is called demand reduction, and that's really what it says on the tin, really. We want to look at problems, do some problem solving and stop them repeating. So they'll be dealing with repeated domestic violence, they'll be dealing with mental health cases, things like that, where they can hold the mental health authorities to account as to why, you know, we're getting repeat demand for mental health cases, which really, if I'm honest, is not really a police issue. So they're going to try and reduce the demand on the constabulary. The other thing is engagement with yourselves and the public and being visible and making sure that people understand. So that's going into schools, all the things you traditionally would understand around what engagement is. Then we've got what I call dealing with vulnerability, and this is perhaps a new area for them, where certainly when I joined policing there weren't so many perhaps vulnerable people around who had less structure around their lives really. So in Haverhill there is a lot of people who are vulnerable to all sorts of things. Be it, you're going to say, really, in Suffolk, but radicalisation, yes. You saw the ADT yesterday or the day before with the guy trying to bomb Lincoln Heath. It's here. We were dealing with it. I was part of that, to tell you about it. But everyone dealing with that, there were lots and lots of cops involved in that, and you couldn't see any of them. And that's the whole point, because we wouldn't want us to see it. So what I'm trying to say is really, is my naivety was around explaining what it is the police do sometimes, helps people to understand that actually you do have a safer neighbourhood team, but that's a really small part of policing, and they're really important to you, and they're the people you see, and we will be there. Things we're going to stop doing. At the moment, the safer neighbourhood team have to help out with responding to incidents. If there's not enough response officers around, well, they're not going to do that anymore. Okay, we've made sure we've got enough officers to respond to 999 calls, and that's why we've taken them away from dealing with things like police and nighttime economy. We want them in the daytime, visible, so people can see them, working with our partners and reducing. So a really good example of that perhaps would be around licensing. At the moment, safer neighbourhood team officers have to police the nighttime economy, which is dealing with drunks and things. Well, I don't want them doing that in the future. What I want them doing is working with licensees or the licensing authority or town councils for them and saying, right, let's go and do a licensing inspection. Let's make sure they're shipshape. Let's make sure they're okay, so we don't have problems in the evening. Okay, so that's the prevention I'm talking about. So they are going to have to stop doing some stuff, and I suspect at some point that someone here is going to mention the word parking, and we'll deal with that when the question comes up. But that is very much how I see them going. So if you think of them as your local team, that are there to prevent all those other bits of policing you can't see needing to occur.
Okay, very short. I actually witnessed the quiet policing tactics a few months ago.
Oh,
We were in church, St Mary's, and as we went to communion, a lady in the front row had a handbag stolen.
Right.
And her husband, who's a plainclothes officer, put a tracker on her phone. Within 20 minutes, they tracked that bag to a flat above shopping Queen Street.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I'd also say that if anyone's please, if anyone's got an iPhone or an iPad or anything, put Find My iPad app on it, please, because we've opened some great results with some of that. We had one the other day, we're going from side slightly, but some genius criminal stole an iPad and they put a thing on it which said that when you, not an iPad, sorry, a laptop, when you power up the laptop next time, the camera comes on, so there's a big picture of the criminal using the computer. So I've installed that on my laptop now, and it's a free app, and I suggest you all get it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Question number 6 is one particularly important for Haverhill. So who's got that one?
Before I do that, let me just go back slightly, something just occurred to me. If I did try to look on both your website and the council for the new local policing areas.
Right.
I know it's going down from, is it number 7?
29 safer neighbourhood teams to 18.
I was trying to look for those maps, but I couldn't find them.
They're not on the websites yet.
Sandra might.
There's a Constables County on the front page of the PCC's website. If you look on that, it has the areas, but it doesn't.
You just put that up.
No, it's been there for a while. It doesn't. I don't think it drills right down to the 18. But
The videos, my videos.
Probably, yeah.
I don't think it has the boundaries, but it shows you where they're based from.
Yeah.
Oh, take it out of a look, sorry. Yeah, this goes on about the police station particularly. You and I have had email conversations about it before. I think everyone knows who I am anyway. The decision to close the front door of the police station. I know you're keeping 3 open in the whole county. Logically, I suppose you look at them and say, yeah, you know, west, you know, north east, wherever it is. But one of the problems I can see is we have a hell of a lot of people pass through that front door. Whether it's reporting a lost handbag or found a handbag or that sort of thing. And I'm not aware that anyone's actually done a survey of how many people go through that front door. Now, they may well have done.
We have, yeah.
But leading on from that is, you know, you're announced you're going to close all these doors, which, you know, obviously the police station even now is not open 24/7. But I do find that wallet in the street or the iPad or whatever. At the same time, you didn't announce how I go about reporting it.
Okay, got it.
You know, and I'm not talking about necessarily me, I probably know what to do, but I'm talking about that elderly person in the street who finds it, what does she do?
Right, okay. No, well, thanks, Paul. That's a very good question. Right, first of all, the front desk closures, 15 out of the 18 front desks are closing throughout Suffolk for one obvious reason. Okay, keeping those open with a member of staff behind them actually costs £750,000 a year. I think it's a better use of public money to have, get the mess right, 15 extra police officers in Suffolk instead of having the front desk. It costs on average, ladies and gentlemen, £50,000 a year to employ an officer of all ranks, including employment costs, pension contributions and so on, right? So that's what it costs to employ, that's a sort of currency unit, if I dare use that word here. So there's a judgment to make. All of this was based on evidence of the amount of people who visit the police station with calls that are to do with policing, and that is extremely low in all those places where we decided to close the front desk. Now that is a decision at the moment in principle. What I can certainly tell you here today is with the growth in Haverhill, if there was evidence that we really did need a front desk and we needed to make other arrangements for whatever reason, I can absolutely guarantee we will look at that, because one of the things I said to the constabulary when they started on these plans, have you looked at the demographic changes that are likely to happen for the next 5, 10, 15 years? They assured me that they have. So, whilst that is set out as a principle at the moment from April the 1st, if we find for whatever reason there is a huge difference in demand, there are other ways that we could look at doing this about the front desk. I think we should be putting things together in the public sector and so on. It depends what the context is. It's absolutely crazy, and this is where politicians, me included and many of you here, we need to work together to come up with a solution that sorts out the community. And you will not find me holding back on that. Some politicians need to get up off their backside and actually make these things happen. They really, really do. Because the resources have got to be kept for keeping the front line, those officers, whatever it is, those resources to keep people safe. So it's a decision. Please remember we have to live within our means, and it's a matter of choice and priorities. There are still difficult choices to make. Anyone who's run a business or your own domestic budget, you will have had to do the same, I'm quite sure. So that's a choice. If we had loads of money, we wouldn't shut any of them. We'd actually keep them open 24/7. But we haven't. So that was the reason behind that. Now, you may not all agree with that, but that's the reason that we took. We've consulted on it. As Andrew says, these things were taken based on evidence, not just sticking your finger in the air hoping that's what it was. Okay? So that's why they were closed. And obviously the station itself is not closing. I don't know why some people have been running around saying the station is closing. They are not. That is a fact. They are not closing. So if you need to contact Andrew or anyone else, or Danny Cooper when he comes here, and you need to meet them in the police station, that will still happen. Absolutely no question of that. Now, dealing with lost property, you could take the view, as many forces have done, is the police service a lost property service? You could say no, it is not. And I don't think it is actually. Having said that, clearly, we're not going to run away from these issues. Dealing with lost property and so on, we're actually coming up with a new scheme that we're ready to put in place on April the 1st. Haven't quite finalised the details yet, but rest assured you will not be left hanging high and dry that suddenly if someone does find a purse or a bunch of keys or whatever, then we will be having a system where we will know how to deal with it. For example, if you find a lost driving licence, what it says on there, return to DVLC or whatever, DVLA or whatever it's called. That's the thing to do. So on our new website, we've got a brand new website that we're developing at the moment that will go live in the autumn. There will be a lot more interactive information on how to deal with things like that. But we won't be leaving this abandoned in the interim period. Come April the 1st, you will know what the new system is, and it will need to adapt and change as we go forward. So it's an important part of what's done. Sometimes things brought to police station, there might be a bit of evidence, so we need to have a proper system there. But absolutely guarantee we will let you know what that is in plenty of time. And we'll need to have a publicity drive so people understand what it is. But ultimately it's a choice of priorities and where do you spend your money.
Right, can I just follow up on that slightly?
Yep.
I understand that however many lots you're showing, front desk you're showing
15 out of 18.
I'm not sure it's 14 out of 18.
I'm sure.
Because, you know, the police station here is manned by civilian staff, not by police officers. So if you're only taking civilian staff, so the chance is actually less than a police officer when it comes to reporting in what's what. And
It doesn't alter the fact it's still $750,000.
No, totally, yes, but I'm talking about as an individual police station,
Yep.
it doesn't cost £250,000 to man that front desk. I don't know what the figure is, but you know, obviously not. It's a shame that when you announced all this, there were no statistics behind the figures to say, well, the reason we're doing it is because we only have 10 people a week coming through the front door, perhaps. I don't think it was obviously. But equally, as you know, okay, you're doing things, which is fine, but this, you know, your announcement was what, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whenever the figure was. And on social media and the like, it's a lot, well, what are we going to do? And I think it would be nice, even if you haven't completed the details, to actually say, well, our plan is roughly something like this.
Yep.
And I fully understand about lost property. I mean, you could hire that off to somebody or whatever. And you need, you know, I vaguely remember Haverhill was that you've got massive rooms full of lost property last time I heard, but you know, I don't know if that's still the case or not.
Yeah.
So it concerns us, and you're right about the, you know, the expansion of the town, of course. But I think people have just been left in the dark about what the plans are. So rather than get to April 1st, 4th, whatever it is, when you implement something, I would have thought it'd be nice to have actually, particularly those people who don't have access to the internet. And people like Hannah and wherever she is over there from the press, you know, she should be publishing in the local paper now, what the rough ideas are.
If I was to share with you, I have been on to the Conservative, you know, that's the Chief Constable's plan.
Yeah.
I've agreed with it. You know as well as I do the number of times I go on about communication and the need to be proactive and tell the public. I don't run their communications department.
No,
I have told them repeatedly to get it sorted. All right? So let's be quite clear about that. I entirely agree with you. Opportunities like this, I told them to make sure they had a plan ready and announce it beforehand. And Sandra can vouch for that. Sandra, by the way, does our communication with the PCC. We have got to get that message out to the public. That's one of the reasons I'm losing my hair, actually. But seriously, you're absolutely right. You've got to get that message out. I have been on at them for months about this. Now you need to go and ask others why that perhaps hasn't got through. It is difficult, actually, in a time of change, to be absolutely fair. With all the change going on, having to get the balance, and the day job has to go on as well. You know, that wouldn't be acceptable. So we do need to do this together. That's why these meetings are really, really important. I will take that back and we'll see if we can bring that forward. And I can only apologise if you feel you haven't been informed. But, you know, we've really got, and I don't want to, there's no crocodile tears here, communication I've been on about ever since I was elected. It needs a step change. There isn't an excuse, but it is something that's really important. So we will do, we'll come back to you and let you know the Town Council in plenty of time and spread it out to any of the groups that we network with, social media, all sorts. It's got to be done, and it will be done.
I have a video evidence of the communications.
You do know that, don't you? Can I say?
Thank you very much. Councillor Burns has asked question 7 as well as question
Sorry,
6.
Colin, could I just talk about the communication for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Can I just say that there are no the free papers in Haverhill now. Most people don't get them anymore because that was a good way of communicating. But could I just say the one thing that every household gets is their rates bill.
Yes.
Could the police not put a specific letter in with that rates bill, which would save an awful lot of money? Every household gets that, and it would be a really effective way of getting something into every household, because a lot of people don't have internet, and if they do, they're not going to be interested in looking at the police stuff. So, you know, that it is a really important message that John's saying about communication. But if we could find a cheap way of doing it, that would be a...
Yeah, no, I'll take that back and we'll see if we can do that. But that's a very good point. If there's an important message, that once in a year thing that goes to every household, as a let's put it in a bright blue colour or something which stands out so that it's obvious, then it falls out not much different, and I'll take it back. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on John's point. Our residents are very concerned that they will no longer be able to walk into their local police station. If they just want a casual chat with a police officer face to face, it's going to make it so difficult for our residents. They just, you know, to have the locked doors. And especially with the wider rural area, which I know you are concerned about, and with Clare Police Station closing, you know, we're talking about a huge population here. And if we're asking if you could really go away and reconsider our front desk, even if it was on a part-time basis of just mornings. You know, we would really appreciate that, and especially the population of Haverhill, because they are really extremely concerned that the doors are locked and they have not got access to their police officers.
Right, okay, now that's a very, very fair point to raise. What I can say is that Clare, actually, because it was somebody, I don't know who it was, announced it was going to shut, it was actually misleading to put that information out. What we actually did was arrange to have a drop-off point in Clare, and there's one of these intercoms, so we've actually come up with another solution for Clare. It has saved some money, but actually Clare has not been left with nothing whatsoever, and that's really important to get that. Now the other issue here, one person has suggested, I forget which meeting we went to, was there any possibility of having a part-time front desk with volunteers actually manning it? I'm looking at that at the moment. Please understand, you can't have just anybody going to a police station being a volunteer. They have to be vetted and cleared and so on, which obviously you'll understand that. If there is a way we can have community self-help for that, I'm 110% behind it. I'm prepared to put a bit of money into just get it up to training and these sorts of things. That is something we're looking at the moment. It will take just a little bit of time to look at that. So don't give up on that. Do not despair. That's absolutely crucial. You know, it's an old-fashioned policing principle, the public are the police and the police are the public. We do it to help ourselves, all right? And that's important. I don't personally believe in a status solution for everything because we don't have the money to do it. But if there's a way we can work together, absolutely, I'm 100% on that. So we will take that and have a look at it. I'll have to come back to you with the actual data as regards the number of people that go to the police station. I will do that, and I'll take that down and write back because there's a couple of other questions I want written answers to. I will let you know what the data was. It does also say, and I think I've said that earlier, if there is a real upturn in demand, so it will be looked at again. These are not set in stone, so the answer to your question in a roundabout way is yes, we will have a look at it again.
The trouble is when something closes, we all are realistic. When something
I
closes,
understand that.
it doesn't usually open again.
But I'm not, yeah, I understand that, but actually things can be reversed. And I'm not going to come here and say it will definitely be reversed, but I'm definitely saying we will have a careful look at it.
You'll have another look at closing our front desk.
We'll have a look at that, yes, I'll take that back. If there's another way of looking at it with volunteers or something, we'll have to have a look at it, all right? But what I can't do is say that it won't close on April 1st at the moment, unless something changes that will happen. But if you found, I don't know, there was a huge demand, or if the local guys on the ground said, look, we need to do something, we will, of course, we'll have a look at it. I'm there to represent your views, after all, and I'm going to go right hard if I don't actually follow that up. So that is really important. So that's what we'll do. But I will get the figures for you. And actually, all I can say is, from what I remember, I asked exactly that question, why these particular towns? I did actually say Haverhill will soon, well, probably will be our third biggest town very soon. Are we sure we've done the right things? The evidence at that time suggested there were very, very few people who actually did call into the police station out on an ad hoc basis. At the moment, if you've got the contact numbers, and we need to make sure everybody's got that as well, and you want to meet someone, that can be done. So there are 2 or 3 things there, we'll definitely have a look at it. But I suspect we'll find the data showed very few people did actually go into the police station. But I'll let you have those, definitely.
Thank you. Next question is about PCSOs.
I'll have to rejig it slightly.
Okay.
Yeah, afternoon.
Hello.
Tony Brown, Councillor Haverhill. One of the jewel in the crowns of Haverhill policing, I consider, was the our SMT meeting that we used to have. Very, very well attended. We used to have 50 people turn up. We used to have an online engagement. It was absolutely terrific. Peter Ferring did a fantastic job of engaging the Haverhill public, and I think, to be fair, one of the best things they did. It was a brilliant safety valve for residents to be able to turn up, engage with the police, get their concerns heard. It weren't the big stuff, it was the stuff that blights normal people's everyday lives. But they felt that their voice was being listened to. What we were extremely concerned with the changes, possible changes to the SNT and possibly losing PCSOs, is that we're going to lose a huge amount of knowledge, local knowledge, that's built up over the years. A huge amount of trust, a terrific amount of trust. You know, that people always knew that Inspector Ferry was there for them, and they could come to one of our SNT meetings, raise an issue, and generally it was sorted out. We're just extremely worried about what's happening all over. You know, you're throwing the baby out of the bathwater, basically. It's a huge progressive step possibly we have.
Yeah, okay, so you're talking about your priority setting meetings, I think is what the...
Exactly,
yeah,
right, exactly.
Okay. There is no reason why they can't continue. I guess the message, it was translated in one way, maybe interpreted another. The idea was we wanted to evolve our priority setting meetings, because what was happening was that those meetings were setting a number of priorities which needed to be balanced against other priorities you can't see again, and therefore the realism of achieving those priorities wasn't always going to be achieved. So if I do that by example, so most priority setting meetings across the county, you'd be no surprise, come up with roughly the same thing. It's speeding in a rural area, cycling on a pavement, dogs doing what they shouldn't do on pavements, and that kind of thing. Now, that is all really, really important. I'm not deriding the importance of that. What was happening was that you would set a priority setting meeting. I know that the one in Haverhill, to be fair, wasn't the best one we had in the county, but that wasn't true everywhere. We go away from months, come back, and nothing was done about them, because actually in the interim period there's been a series of house breaks or car thefts or other things, and as a police service we need to prioritise our resources against the things that have the biggest threat, risk and harm. So what we said is we'd like to perhaps transform those priority setting meetings so that there's an understanding that although the priorities have been set, there's professional opinion from police officers as well to say, we understand what you're saying publicly, we do as much as we can towards that, but there are also these other priorities coming in which, again, we either can't tell you about because it wouldn't be right to do so, or you can't see. So, for example, serious sexual offences is a really, really good example. So, I'm sure you've all seen in the paper that the amount of serious sexual offences in Suffolk and all across the country has absolutely rocketed for really, really good reasons. And it's a good thing. And actually, what we're actually doing now is dealing with issues that happened many, many years ago, and the demand is now. So I would say, you would say parking in Kennington is an issue, for example, and we would say, yes, we'll dedicate someone towards that, but halfway, we also know in the background, actually, what we really want to be doing is regular visits to the victim of this serious sexual offence, this domestic violence person, all those sorts of things. So it's balanced that kind of professional judgment. And what the message was is, continue with your priority setting meetings, but can you just take the priority bit out of it? It's more like an engagement, so it's a listening to the public to understand what your priorities are, then an honest and open and honest conversation from us to say that we accept what you're saying, and then our list of priorities, that one is clearly what you're saying is near the top, but that one might have to be a bit further down, and all these other things. And then kind of more understanding. And I think in that translation, that's got turned into stop doing priority setting meetings because we can't get priorities. But my sort of kind of promise to you, as you like, is that as soon as Danny Cooper arrives, they need to start again in a new format. Now the good news for you is that Danny, who's currently in Sudbury anyway, he's kind of morphed his meetings already, and actually they're run by the residents, and we come along, and they're really, really good. And they're almost like more powerful. So the residents organise them, they call them, they chair them, they talk it all through, and we're like a member there. And actually what we're finding now is that the people they really want there is someone from mental health, or from their town council, or from their district council. And actually it's a priority for the public that the police can't solve it on their own.
But we do that anyway.
Yeah.
They were very well attended by the councillors.
Yeah.
We tried to get council officers from Suffolk County Council and the borough to attend, and they did. So that's one of the reasons that they were so good. They could identify issues that weren't just police issues. They were across the board. So yeah, this is what we're really worried about. Is this loss of knowledge. Yeah, if we do lose PCSOs, have been in Haverhill for 2 or 3 years and really have built up some terrific local knowledge. You know, that's gone.
Yeah, then I don't think they'll all go, but again, be careful to talk about that. But certainly around police officers-wise, you know, Matt Gilbert is still going to stay, Cheryl Claydon, you know well, I do know the other officers, but I need to be careful about what I say around some of them, that hasn't been finalised, but that local knowledge is going to stay, and we need to get those priority setting meetings working again. I'd quite like to do it in that way that I've described.
Yeah, and we'd be 100% behind them, you know, because Peter Ferry was so committed, so we're just worried that possibly if Dan is looking after a larger area, that he won't have the resources or the time to actually dedicate as much time and effort as what Peter Ferry did.
But actually, Dan has more time.
Yeah, well, that's
Because Peter today is your local inspector. I know he's also my duty inspector. He's in very much in the cells, reviewing detainees. He's not here. Danny doesn't have to do that anymore. So he is 100% local policing, and it's going to be a 50-50 split. So it won't be perfect. Things will go wrong because it's policing. Things go wrong in policing quite a lot. We do that. But I think my commitment is I don't want to lose that. I used to watch them on YouTube from a distance and enjoy watching them. So yeah,
we've got your commitment.
Can I just add to that? The PCSOs that we have in Haverhill not only do them things, but the most important thing they do is drugs. We have a big problem with drug people coming from London and selling it in Haverhill, and massive problem. And that leads to all sorts of things in Haverhill, like car breaking, shoplifting, all them other crimes, you know, and when it comes to domestic abuse. So it all leads to that. And this is my big fear, is that they are the eyes and ears, if you like. You know, as they walk around, people say to them on the off chance, oh, there's a person next door to me that, or persons that keep going in and out next door. And they are the eyes and ears, so they get to know them sort of people. And that's the big fear that we have in Haverhill.
I understand that. They're not going anywhere. They are still your eyes and ears. In fact, you're my eyes and ears, if I could be so bold. No, they're still going to be, and you are right about that problem from London, and that sadly is not unique to Haverhill. That's happening across, it's actually called county lines now, where people are coming out of London, and it's in Ipswich and Yarmouth and all those places, and Haverhill is not immune from that, and I totally understand that. But actually the solution to that problem is a particular social landlord which I deal with, and the people who deal with that are the borough council. I'm not absolving us of it. We lock up baddies, it's what we do, it's what we do, the police. We lock up villains, it's what I'm here for. We should lock up drug dealers, all that. But the actual long-term final solution to that is that people from Cambridgeshire are being housed in Haverhill because Cambridgeshire Council have decided to take a decision to put those people here in a particular social landlord's fleet of houses, for all of that word. Now, he's doing nothing wrong, breaching no laws at the moment, we can find. So we're aware of it, we're dealing with it. Those eyes and ears are not going to go away. What I would say is around visibility is, and for no bad reason, it's just a fact that sometimes, or before we had more people, so we can patrol, if you like, without a purpose, so that those sort of wander around. So there'll still be patrolling, but it'll be a bit more with a purpose. So what I call task visibility rather than generalised visibility. It sounds like a kind of management speak, I don't really mean it like that. We've got less resources, we've got less money, Tim has said that. We've only got a certain amount of PCC, so actually let's make the most out of them. So actually, there's a couple of addresses on the Clements at the moment that are causing us lots of problems. So actually, PCSOs, I want you to patrol there rather than anywhere, and that's what it will be. So there'll be team meetings every week, and right, okay, the current problem is right, okay, this is the amount of time we can afford patrolling in a visible manner, and we'd like you to do it here. It might be parking or speeding in Kennington, it might be London drug dealers on the Clements or whatever it might be, and that's kind of going to have to be left to our professional opinion, unfortunately, because we live and breathe every day. But with your meetings, that's exactly where they're going to come. So the public run the meetings, we listen, and we do something about it when we can. So actually, those PCSOs are tasked, if you see what I mean, in that way. But I understand the fear, I do get it, I'm not immune to that.
Can I just add one other little thing to that, just very quickly as you've raised it? This is where I do think we need to have much more, I suppose, a two-way process with communities and volunteers and things like this, because we are all eyes and ears of the public. Really old-fashioned penal principle was it's the duty of every citizen to report suspicious circumstances to the police. That was said in 1829. That is just as true today. And we really have got to up the game. And certainly anything I can do to help to raise the profile of that. We've got a really big push on volunteers. And I'm not talking people, you know, obviously special constabulary, they're very good volunteers with powers and so on. And it reminded me of that there, but there was many about specials at the bottom. But seriously, getting people to work, the more traditional ones at neighbourhood watch and so on, we've got volunteers on horseback. We're looking at every possible way we can get people to actually work together as a community to get the information. It's then up to Andrew and his colleagues, when that information comes in, to deal with it. And that's what these guys are trained for, to do, you know, as he said, getting criminals. I have a loading of the drugs culture, absolute zero tolerance on that. They are, I remember Edward Buchanan, he was an MP many years ago, and somebody remembered for talking to him, and he actually said, drug dealers, we said, I don't know what we do about them, but they are the filth of society. And I 100% agree with that. The misery, the degradation, the crime, the petty crime, it's domestic abuse, the whole sordid lot goes in with that, and we have to deal with it. But we also have to deal with everything else as well, and that's why I'm absolutely adamant we've got to have more community involvement. And these meetings, and I think it's a really good idea, let the community do it, and we can come in and help deliver it. Really, really important as we go forward that we do that. Absolutely, I think it's a really good point to raise.
Can I just say something in praise of Sophie, our local PCSO? She's not doing just a good PCSO, but given a lot of her free time to help set cadets.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, she's obviously used this as a form of apprenticeship. She's going on to become a fully fledged police officer. Good luck to her, she'll be brilliant. Cannot we get more young PCSOs to use this apprenticeship to work with them?
Yeah, okay, now on apprenticeships, we're actually looking at a scheme at the moment. Just so you know, we are actually the constabulary, because of the new apprenticeship levy, it works the other way around as well. We're going to have to pay 400,000 quid a year for the apprenticeship levy because we're an organisation of a certain size. Now we are looking at developing an apprenticeship scheme so that our young people here in Suffolk can take advantage of it. I know Sophie very well. I went to the Samuel Ward Academy Awards. The police and fire cadets, that was the first, not only just for Haverhill and Suffolk, Joint Emergency Services cadets. That was my idea. We've got a big programme to push them out. We've got to get that expanded. That was the first one ever in the whole country, and it's tremendous. And that was here, in Haverhill, leading the way. So these sorts of things are important. We're getting really good people who started the PCSOs to come to the constabulary. I suspect by the time we have this transformation, and I actually spoke to Gareth Wilson this morning on the way over here, we almost see the number of actual redundancies, it could even be zero. I'm not saying it will be, but just a handful, because opening up recruitment, we've got, I don't know, 60 or 70 officers retiring over the next year. I don't know exactly what it is. It's difficult to tell precisely. But with the extra 30 positions that we've got, maybe we'll be recruiting 60, 70, 80, I don't know. But there is ample opportunity that we don't lose those skills, that local knowledge that we've got from the PCSOs. We haven't recruited for 2 years because of finances, but that is now all about to change in a major way, and that has got to be really, really good news. So I think that's a really good point, Betty, and we're right on the case.
Okay, we have a question now about the overall future.
Yeah, Barry Robbins, Councillor Haverhill. Can you tell us what is the overall future of the Haverhill Police Station?
Right, okay. The overall future of the police station, I'm actually saying, I'm not being present here, I don't know. And I'll tell you why I say that, because there is a lot of space there that isn't being used. The PCC, if you like, owns the estate of the constabulary on behalf of the taxpayer, which is not mine. So I know you've got plans that you're developing for the town centre. Absolutely count us in. Yeah, you will have a police station in Haverhill, do not worry about that, number one. That's absolutely guaranteed, and I can say that. Okay. As regards value for money, a joint public sector facility, or I don't care how it's done, more than happy to look at that. We've got a very good programme of joint fire and rescue and police stations. It's obvious that we should start to put emergency services together. We just need to make sure we work with our colleagues to find the right way to do it. We've got possibilities, for example, magistrates' courts having shut down. Why can't we use some facilities here and there for public courts? So instead of just ending up with 1.5 magistrates' courts in Suffolk, which I think is a crazy idea, perhaps we could have 7 or 8. pop-up courts, its access to justice is absolutely crucial, and I'm right on the case with that as well. So, count us in. We always have a police station here in Haverhill, no question of that. Does it need to stay there? It depends what else needs to be done. We want to be a really willing, constructive partner with the Town Council and obviously the Borough Council, the Planning Authority, to come up with what you want. So it's actually a facility that is fit for the next 20, 30 years, recognising the importance of Haverhill as one of, well, probably the biggest growth town actually in Suffolk, I think. So, very definitely. So, I hope that satisfies, but you're right, definitely.
Right, then we have, well, a bit more about the estate that you have. Some good questions, Ted?
Me, Moringburn, Southwood, Haverhill. Question for you is, how is it that the dog kennels at Haverhill Police Station has just been renovated at considerable cost when we've had no dogs there for some 15 years? Is it understood the force will now be taking in stray dogs?
Why it's there, but I don't know.
Well, I will have to find out. One of these, I think again, that's the first I've heard about that. Leave that with me and I'll find out. But let me make this quite clear. If that has been done unnecessarily, I'm not going to be terribly amused. When we are apparently in a time of austerity. Leave that with me, and I can't comment on that because I don't know. But as regards stray dogs...
Well, I've got to find, I don't know how it's new to me as well, that particular one. But we've got a problem when we have dangerous dogs. So what's happened recently is that we don't deal with stray dogs. That's a Borough Council thing and end of conversation, which is really, really great up until 5 p.m. on a Friday. So,
yes.
Or we come across one ourselves, and then because the police have got it at the council, anyway, we spent ages arguing about it, and we sort it out eventually. But the issue is that the law has changed recently, which around dangerous dogs, and quite significantly, and it's actually one of the reasons why there's been an increase in violent crime. So far more dogs are now deemed to be dangerous, and far more dogs are now, you can commit more offences with a dog. That makes sense. So, so if you have a dangerous dog, we have to seize it for obvious reasons, and then we have to look after it. Now, obviously, we try and put that into well-established kennels or things like that. But again, at 5 p.m. on a Friday, there isn't enough to do about that. So I know that we were looking at the provision of how do we look after dangerous dogs in the short term. I don't know, I didn't know that, as Tim, I apologise for that, that Adrian, and again, I'm quite annoyed if that had happened at great expense. I need to look into it. But I do know that the constabulary, along with all other constabularies, had to find a way of looking after dangerous dogs at short notice that we'd see. And I'm sure you've seen all those, hasn't happened in Suffolk, thank goodness, but I'm sure you've seen all those horrible maulings and all that sort of thing. Well, normal kennels aren't set to deal with dogs, they just simply can't, because especially in Suffolk where we've just got charitable organisations and rescue homes. So we had to come up with a solution until we could get them somewhere accessible, but I'll have to go away and find out.
What would also be useful at the same time, if you could just give some indication how often it's used. You know, do you get one dog every 6 months or 6 dogs?
Yeah, I'll find out. We'll have to let you know. We will.
Thank you for that.
The cells.
Yes. Yeah, they're fairly good. Yeah, that's true. Yes.
So we've heard about the timing of resources and going to be available to you. So the next question is almost inevitable, I think. Is what question I have.
David, Deputy Mayor and Town Borough Councillor. I'll sort of expand it a little bit. So, what's the plan to cope with the ever-increasing crime that we're simply getting there? Is that really ever-increasing crime, or is that just the way that the numbers are done as a perception issue because of the way the stats have changed? And adding on to that, we have no road policing at all in this side of the county that is visible, and we're starting to see that with evidence from the vast sides of the event, where we're getting more 80 miles an hour in 30 minutes quite regularly. So it's sort of a biggish question, and some of it is around stats and numbers and how they're accounted. But is it really an increase? And if the numbers of officers are going to stay static, is there a plan to increase that resource if we need to?
Right, I'll let Andrew answer the one about the crime stats. All I can say is over the last 5 years, and this is not political speak, just to say with overall crime, recorded crime, which is only about half the story to start, has declined by 8%, but it is absolutely true, it has gone up this year, but there are particular reasons behind that I'll let Andrew explain, right? So you can accuse me of spinning it, when I don't dream of doing that. But it is important, we've got to have reliable data, that's absolutely crucial, and Andrew can talk about that in a moment. I don't think it's reasonable to say you don't get any roads policing in this side of the county. It depends whether you mean the side where it's north, south, east, west or whichever. But roads policing, and this is a fact, I've got the figures with me today, I am really, really proud of the roads policing we've got here in Suffolk Traffic Policing. We are one of only 2 constabularies since I was elected where we've actually increased capability of roads policing. A lot of forces actually almost got rid of it. In Norfolk, they almost thought they didn't need any traffic police and they were just going to have armed response vehicles. They've actually come back from that now, but that is what I'm told the Chief Constable considered doing up there a few months ago. I told ours, I said, we're not even going to discuss it, and I know Gareth is very pro-roads policing. I mentioned earlier there's an extra roads policing unit starting in April based at Bury. So Bury has, it's not as big as at Marston, the facility there, I know that, but actually we do have roads policing capability here. After this, we are going off to Clare, where we are launching an additional speed enforcement van, a small-scale one. Speeding and parking comes up at every single public meeting I go to, and I bet it comes up at every single public meeting that Andrew goes to as well. It is of a huge concern. So we're putting a lot into speeding and enforcement of that. We've got a new 4-unit motorcycle team that actually goes around the county enforcing before that started at the beginning of November, beginning of December, and we'll be getting some statistics through very soon, and that will go out to towns and villages to really deal on that. I've also ring-fenced all the money that comes from the speed awareness courses, the surplus on that. If you get caught speeding and pay a fine, that will go to the government, nothing to do with the constabulary whatsoever, okay? There is no incentive for us to dog tickets on people. But that surplus for the Road Safe Board, okay, which comes from the awareness courses, there's a surplus in that. If people have paid, I think it's about 84 or 5 quid to go on that, so you don't lose the points and license. There's a surplus of about £20 on each course. That money is ring-fenced to keep here in Suffolk to improve road safety. It does not go into support the constabulary funds. We've got initiatives. There will be a big sum when the County Council gets itself sorted out for putting in a big amount of money for more of the portable vehicle activated signs, a scheme where villages, if they want the movable signs that go on the posts to warn people to slow down. So we're doing quite a lot of that. There'll also be another small-scale speed van we're launching at the end of this month or beginning of next month. So there's 2 of those coming along. So just a quick recap. You've got an extra roads policing unit, there's the extra motorcycle unit, 2 new speed vans and extra money going in to do that, plus a big uplift in the money that's going to support Community Speed Watch. So I'm sure it's not going to be enough, but we are making a real difference towards it.
The perception is that they don't get out as far as it. The only time we see any motorcycle police is when it's Essex that are doing training.
Oh, God. Well, I'm sorry about that. Shouldn't, I mean, what I will do, I mean, we've got a new head of roads policing, Chris Barnard. He only started, I think, about a week ago. Funny enough, I had a meeting with him last Friday, and I can absolutely guarantee he will be on the case on this as well. He knows we had a meeting there, and it is about policing, roads policing all of Suffolk. I know the main roads are a priority, but that does not just mean the A14 and A11 over here in the west. That does include the other A roads within Suffolk here. So leave that with us, but I can absolutely assure you investment has increased in roads policing, and that will continue to do so. It really will. It's very, very important.
Just before Andy talks about the stats, Councillor Marks just want to...
Yes, at an earlier meeting today, you did say that most of the problems on the roads arise from bad driving.
Yeah.
And I think you'll accept that none of the provision that you've just mentioned deals with bad driving.
No.
And even speed awareness courses, most people give up their morning because they know the £100 they pay gets them off of the 3 points, but it doesn't achieve anything in terms of their improvement in driving. Could we not lobby perhaps that instead of a speed awareness course, they have to go on a ROSPA course, which is £68.
Yeah.
You get totally free tuition, and if you fail the first course, you can retake it for nothing, and you would have to achieve, say, a minimum bronze which actually is amazing. What they teach you on those courses are things that a lot of people have forgotten over the years from driving, but it would put safer people back on the road. You're not actually solving the problem of putting safer people back on the road. You're putting the same dangerous people back on the road with maybe no points on their licence. You're not really overall dealing with the underpinning problem.
I think it's a very good point, Margaret, and in actual fact, and I agree with you, because I have a call for a revision for the driving test. It needs to reflect modern conditions, and I know that's for first-time drivers. I'm going to say for young drivers, that doesn't always apply, of course. But if I could just share with you, last year, the Institute of Advanced Motorists asked me to go on their advanced driving course. They sponsored me, that was very kind of them to do that, and that was a real eye-opener. For the same reasons, that did actually change my driving. You were far more aware, and I always remember the instructor said to me, there's a chap called Jeff Beecham, who used to be a police driving instructor, probably many years ago, but he said, and so did the examiner, when you've done one of these courses, nothing should ever surprise you when you're driving on the road. So that extra time for anticipation and allowing for, I don't know, error, and other people who might be completely mad coming the other way, for example, the way they drive. So the unexpected. And it is the case with, I think it's 37 fatalities on Suffolk's road so far. I'm talking about the financial year now. You know, it's a lot. And every one of those is a personal tragedy, clearly for those who die, the friends and relatives, never mind the cost and inconvenience to everybody else. So we need to raise driving standards, and I think anything we can do on that, we need to look at. One of the things with that surplus money that I was talking about is actually getting a scheme together for first-time drivers to raise the standard they're driving. When our boys were younger, they did the Pass Plus course. It's not a panacea, but it does help. And we've got to try and do things like that. And if I could just make one final point on this, for goodness sake, can we not get everybody in the public sector to work together instead of this siloed mentality? So resources that are there for community safety, which includes safety on our roads. We could have the constabulary ourselves and the fire and rescue, the county council, anybody who's interested in it, doing it, and come up with some schemes, be it ROSPA, the IAM, Advanced Motorists, or whoever it is, to raise driving standards, because most collisions, accidents, whatever the terminology is, are driver error or downright bad, reckless driving. And the fatal four are very often involved. We can do what we can for enforcement, but ultimately it's up to individuals who drive a vehicle which potentially is a bit of a missile to jolly well do it properly. So it's another example of the community having to work together. With that concept.
Crime stats, and also because stats are always changing,
Yeah.
but also the perception, I think.
Just before you start being quick, go back to sorry to go about the VAT systems. I've been tasked to collect the data from the one we've got in Haverhill. Probably, I thought hopefully you'll get another one, and I think the town this side will probably get quite a few. In fact, I'm meeting Sophie in an hour's time or something to go and collect the data. But just a couple of things. One, as David mentioned, we've seen speeds of excess of 80 mile an hour and 30 mile an hour since I was in the town. And I'm not just talking one-offs, either 3, 4 people. But you mentioned about Chris Barnard, who presumed to go from Chris Fingers.
He did.
Is anybody actually collating? I mean, I've got a big database, which I've got all this data, which I'm analysing locally. But does that, you know, like I said it to like Big Ferry or Danby later on, does anyone actually do anything with that?
I don't think I think the system is perfectly fair to say that could be improved, and that's something he's taken away, because we need to get the data and actually the publicity on people who think it's funny or clever, and I think it is an act of sheer insanity to drive at that speed in a 30-mile limit. You know, these guys doing the enforcement, be they regular traffic police or whoever, they get pretty sick and tired when all they get is a smack on the backside and off they go. I mean, people who drive at that rate should be banned for 5 or 6 years as far as I'm concerned, or even tear the licence up altogether. You know, because someone was at the A14 doing 128 miles an hour. Well, frankly, that bloke is a menace, and it was a bloke, and they should be banned for a long, long time. And, you know, sentencing, that is not the fault of the constabulary. The sentencing is set, there are guidelines, and that's something I can try and help with to support the guys, the good work that these guys are doing. So we need to be on the case. But collating the data is important, and I think again we'll let you know when I've spoken to Chris again about that.
Yeah. This is only my opinion, but it's what they do in New Zealand. Google that for large brand licensing. I think that's absolutely brilliant. That's nice. If I was something Prime Minister, I'd say do that where you can only drive during the day, you can't have anybody in the car on the first driving test, and you can't treat these at certain levels, and then police officers can take their licence away at the roadside. Brilliant. So if you ever get a chance to lobby for that, do that. Right, that's my opinion only. Crime statistics, lies, damn lies, and then statistics. So, you will see a rise in crime this year in Haverhill. In fact, okay. What is that about? Okay, you could all drop off at this point because it is quite complicated to explain. So I'll try and keep it really, really easy. So the first thing is that the way the Home Office has asked us to record crime has changed significantly. It's called Home Office Crime Recording Guidelines. It's a really good book. If you can't sleep, by all means read it. We have a guru in the Fourth School, Born Rut, he lives and dies it. I don't understand it. It's really, really complicated. But essentially what that meant is that about 40% of the increase in crime you'll see is because we've just recorded it differently. Nothing has changed. And that's what worries me about the fear and perception of crime is. People then go, oh my, especially violence with injury, everybody's going to go, oh my God, you walk down Haverhill High Street and I'm going to get beaten up. It's not the case. Nothing has changed. Okay? But there is going to be an increase in violence with injury, but there's no difference from when I was here. Okay? And I want to reassure people that we need to get that communication out. It's really, really important that it will look on paper, you'll go, oh my God. There is an increase in some areas, which actually is a really, really good thing. So there has been a really big increase in domestic violence reported. And you think, no, it's good. Again, nothing has changed. The same amount of domestic violence is going on. We're just being told about much more. That's a really good thing, and I'm really pleased about that, and I've encouraged that. You will see around about 80% increase in serious sexual offences, and you'll all go, oh my God, that's outrageous. People are being victims of sexual offences all over the place. No, what's happening is people are reporting stuff that's always been going on. Nothing has changed again. Okay, so we are reporting lots and lots of historic crime. And when I say historic crime, I don't mean 1970s. Anything that's historic crime is more than a year old. So there is a lot of people reporting sexual offences that have happened in the relatively, if it's just a Jimmy Savile effect, that's kind of gone away a little bit. That's not happening. What's happening now is people are saying it's okay to report this. So we're having a lot of rape that's reported as, within marriages that have broken down. We have a lot of rape that's reported, or serious sexual offences that are in relationships that have broken down, partnerships. So there are, and this is the message I want to get across, there are no mad people running around raping people in April, anywhere like that. Okay, I'm really worried in April when these come out that we don't get our context and our message right, and I'm with Tim on that around our communication. We must get that right and explain to the public. Go on.
Yes, it's just not the figures, it's the detection rates. I can understand the actual figures rising because it's going to change how you play them, but let's go back to the ones we just had this week in Haverhill. These are some of the big issues: violence with injury, burglary, robbery. I mean, violence with injury, the detection rate is 29%. I think that's really low until I see the actual detection rates for burglary and robbery. Burglary is 6%, and robbery is 8%. That's absolutely shocking, to be fair. What can be done about that? 6% on burglary is people having their houses broken into, turned over, and valuable possessions that they worked hard for and stolen. You're detecting 6%. That's just not really good enough. Sorry.
No, I agree with you. That's fine.
It's not good enough.
No, I agree with you. It's not good enough. There are some reasons behind that, but I agree with you fundamentally. Okay, so one of the reasons is, I guess, that there are burglaries and burglaries. Okay. I've been a victim of burglary. My granny has been a victim of burglary when she was in Essex. Someone broke into a house and stole our goods. That is a burglary, and we need to lock them people up. I totally and utterly agree with you. We need to lock them people up, and we're not doing well enough for that. And I'm happy to stand up here and say that. Okay. Whether you accept it or not, I don't know. But what you need to know is we're doing something about it. That's what, and we are doing something about it. Okay. So we have got a number of people that we need to arrest for burglary. We did get as part of the cuts, we disbanded a team that used to visit people in prison who used to do what's called taking into consideration. So you go to prison and you say, you're in prison for burglary, did you do any other work? And they would either say yes or no. And if they did, we would come out, they would come out with an officer and they'd say, did that house in? We don't have that team anymore, but we're going to put that team back. Because what it doesn't, it gives them closure to the victim. To say, actually, I'm not going to get my possessions back. They actually don't get any more sentence as a result of saying they did something, but they get some closure. So that will, I think that will have a big impact. And last year, that team got 457 extra detections for burglary across the county. Now, there's quite a big discussion there about how, not efficacy, that's not the right word, how the public perceive that. Okay, because we need to explain to the public that no one gets any extra time in prison. You're probably going to get your stuff back because it's gone already. And actually, it's just someone kind of clearing their name, if you like, because it means when they come out, we then can't arrest them for that one if we subsequently get some evidence and they can get some extra time in prison. So we need to explain that, and that's why it was taken away a little bit, was that kind of feeling, well, but ultimately victims are telling us they'd rather say we did it, and then they can get some closure for it. So I agree with you, and we're putting some of that team back to find out. But also we are prioritising it. There are some, but the second, when I said burglaries and burglaries, the second part is there are burglaries reported that we are never ever going to find out who did it within a month of Sundays, and we need to be honest with the public around that. We have a lot of burglaries where you have a multi-occupancy house. There are 6 or 7 people in there. Some work, some don't work. You get drift about what sort of places they are. And one goes to the shower and they say, while I was in the shower, someone's been in my room and stolen my telly. And it's probably clearly someone else. I'll have to be honest with the public and say, never in a million years we're going to find out who's done that. So I totally accept what you're saying. And we do need to do something about that. And we're failing you in that respect. But I like to be open and honest when I talk to the public and not come up and go flat and say there's a reason. So I accept that. The violence of injury, that detection rate is a lot lower, but I would be quite defensive around that because the types of crimes that we're now being reported, again, we're highly unlikely to get a court case out of it, which is what detection is. So if you, and what we do is we focus on victim care. So if I do that by example to make more sense, we have a lot of crime at the moment that comes through educational establishments. Previously, if there was a fight at school, we wouldn't have recorded a crime for that. The school would have dealt with it, and that was the end of it. Now we're required to record a crime, and that's where that's all coming from. Now we don't want to criminalise the kids for having a fight at school. We don't. Unless there's a knife or something really bad involved, but we never want to criminalise them. So the schools still deal with it. We're not going to get detection, and that's what I'm talking about. Nothing's changed. And it's the same with serious sexual offences. We're having a lot of people come forward and say, when I was married, my husband regularly raped me. Now, there's no forensic evidence. It's essentially one word against the other, and we know the standard of proof is really high. So ultimately, where we are with that is, let's look after the victim. Let's make sure they're safe. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. Let's make sure they get the counselling or the help they need to move on with their life. But never in a month of Sundays am I going to tell you that I'm going to detect that crime. So against that conversation, so I totally accept around burglary robbery. You make a good point, and I accept that. Around the other stuff, I would probably push back a little bit and say we need to have a conversation, and that's what we just had. If that's okay.
Yeah. Very quick on that, Andrew. Or I don't know who generates this. I think it's also the way that the stats are produced to us. I mean, the stats were given to us, they get published at the town council meeting and everything. And then we've got a 3-year average, which over the last 3 years, lots of things have happened.
Yeah.
Come out of recession and everything else. And, the statistics on detection rate of drugs, for example, show it's 46%, which is relatively good compared to a Liverpool. That's not actually good. And obviously the way of, as you quite rightly said, this crazy thing that 2 8-year-olds fighting in the playground is 2 offences, it's absolutely stupid. I wonder if someone needs to look at those stats and the way they're produced, some boffin somewhere, and create a better idea, because the sexual offences that happened 30 years ago, yes, they happened, may have happened 30 years ago, and they're being today, but it didn't happen this year. you know, they happened 30 years ago, so you could argue that you should be saying that 30 years ago, a bit like, you know, a statement, a financial statement, what's older than 90 days, what's older than, you know, and I wonder if that's what should be happening.
I think that's a really good point. And actually, this was brought home to another meeting I was at some time ago. You know, and as Andrew rightly says, lies and damn statistics and all that. And you can tie yourself up in knots with all this. But what ultimately we have to do is put things across in plain English. By all means have the stats there, but what does it actually mean to you and I as individuals? And that's what we've got to do. At our accountability and performance panel, we hold those every other month where the Chief Constable, if you like, gets a pretty robust session from us asking them why performance employees. We regularly look at data, that's under the performance section, that happens every time. Why are things done this isn't good? So for example, serious sexual offences, we've been on the case for that for some considerable time. That's why extra resources have gone into that, extra police officers, extra staff. And the same when it comes to solving things like crime anyway, that's why I've got an extra 20 officers going into an investigations unit. So I hope that will enable Andrew to come back here in a year's time and say, well, actually we are improving. So, you know, we're well aware of that concern to do that. But recording the data, I was quite shocked when I was first elected, and I go to one or two national meetings for PCCs, and you know it's the case that I'd almost go so far as to say with 43 different police forces in England and Wales, I wouldn't say there's 43 different systems of recording it, perhaps, but there's certainly quite a different way of interpreting it. And I do think, and I'm not just saying this because I'm here today, I do think if you look at the way Suffolk records its data, it is as good and reliable and as open and straightforward as anyone's. And you know, when you get someone like Andrew saying, well, yeah, that isn't good enough, there aren't that many who would do that, and certainly not in other counties. So I think we're really pleased to hear that. Then it's a question of making sure we're trying to record in a uniform way and a consistent way, because that's the other problem, isn't it? Averages can cover up all sorts of variations, but you need the narrative to go with the figures. Now we are looking at that to try and make it easily understood. So what are the trends and what does it mean? And not have a knee-jerk reaction to one set of statistics. So it's a complex area, but we are looking at how can we get it across to people so it shows the difference it makes. So you've got the county-wide perspective, but obviously coming right down to your localities and so on, and that's important. I don't think we've got the answer right yet, but maybe we could perhaps come back and test it out, see what you think. And that's where I think these community engagement meetings and community setting meetings, you be able to say, well, that's what you want here. Maybe we can localise it a bit more and put it in for the area, because you know your crime issues here are not going to be the same, for example, as where I live right in the middle of nowhere in the middle of Suffolk, and the other way around. And that's one of the advantages of the system in there, but we can actually try and hone right down into localities and do it, and that will obviously help Andrew, I would imagine, for directing his resources. Right. So, but yeah, we do need to do more, and I think it's a really good compliment.
Thank you very much.
Item 12, I think that's been answered.
It's been answered.
Can I just on that, just ask a question on training, because I think it's very important. When it comes to mental health and all sorts of issues that you come up against when you sort of go into family home, is there any training that the officers get on people with mental health? And I'm going to mention again autism, Asperger's, all them sort of things as well. Because I reported this a couple of years ago at a meeting at Stanley Wall, and the chief inspector said then that, you know, there wasn't any training as far as autism and you know, mental health sort of things. He held his hands up and said that, which is very honest with you. And I just wonder if anything's happened since then.
It has, so yeah, it's good news. Talking about statistics, this is one that always makes me people listen. So 15% of our demand is dealing with crime. That's it. Everybody goes, well, that's what you did. 100% of the time you're dealing with the police. No, 15% of our time is dealing with crime. Another good chunk, about 20% is dealing with traffic and roads and all that. About 40% of our time is spent dealing with people in crisis. And my feeling of that is that a police issue? Question mark? I think we should be dealing with people in crisis. We should be dealing there as a sticky plaster, and we get people saying, no, we are the service of last resort, we're there 24 hours. How did it get to that point in the first place? And so 40% of our time is doing what we call a concern for welfare. people bring up saying, worried about this or whatever it is, all sorts of stuff. And I would like to do more against burglary if I had less of that. And it's about holding other agencies to account. And I know Tim does that very well on our behalf, but boy, do I do it as well locally, don't worry about that. So I just put that in context for you, the answer. But to answer your question, yes, we have done some specific training on autism because of, maybe because you suggested, I don't know. Well done for you if you did, but
just 2 years ago.
yeah, we do specific mental health training and we do specific autism training. We are making strides forward, so we have a mental health nurse in our control room now, who we try and just put the phone call to in the first place. If that doesn't work, we've got mental health workers in patrol cars now, or, well, a patrol car at the moment for the county. But my question mark, why are the police driving the mental health worker around in the long run? Why aren't they doing it themselves? And thirdly, we've got mental health workers in our custody facilities, and they need to be there because we do often have, that's where we want to take them, they go there. But yeah, so if you think that 40% of our lines around that, clearly we'd invest in training them, and all officers have had a level of training. I wouldn't say that it's anywhere more than like a community first responder in a physical sense, you know, but it is an enhanced training, and we take them all to the, anyone we come across goes to a specific suite in Bury Hospital now, and we hand them over to the mental health people. But I think it's a bit of a national drum, and I'll bang it locally. I don't think the police should be dealing with that, if I'm honest. I don't know, but my feeling is that, and we need to work together to move that demand where it should be.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but when it comes to special autistic adults, they, what they call, have a meltdown.
Yeah.
And when an officer goes to arrest them and grabs them, that makes them much, much worse.
That's the worst thing you can do, right?
That's the worst thing you can do. And that's what they need training on, that specific thing.
We've done that.
You're doing that. I mean, just to reinforce that, I'm glad you mentioned it. I think I do remember you asking, because that is an issue, mental health. The actual figures for Suffolk Constabulary, at times, over a third of the time is spent dealing with mental health related issues. Now, my view is not very different from Andrew's at all, actually. The Constabulary is the only service out and about all the time that is there 24/7 to look after people who get in the mower, or are vulnerable, in difficulty, in crisis, call it whatever you like, and that will always continue. The problem, I think, then goes after, once they have been, should we say, engaged with the Constabulary, it's not up to the Constabulary to be mental health practitioners. This is completely mad. It's not the right thing to do. What we have to do is to triage it and actually move them on to those professionals and people who have the expertise to deal with it. I've seen it at first hand. It can be extremely distressing, not only actually for the person in distress, but sometimes for officers and so on. You can wonder what on earth you do. I've actually even had it on a rugby pitch on occasions, and someone's had a seizure, and you think, what you're helpless, what on earth do you do? So, one of the things that was one of the reasons to keep the control in Suffolk 2 years ago was because if you look at the pattern of policing on, it wasn't just about looking after Suffolk's interests, although I think that was exactly the right thing to do. But moving forward, you can see that public services and the voluntary sector, which is really, really important in these areas of work, how do we put things together, given that finances and resources are pressurised and demand is changing, in many cases going up? Being able to triage that with our own control room, or call it a data information hub, I don't care what it's called. The blue light is but a small part of the business, probably it's only about 5-6% of demand who are calls going to the control room. Nearly 80% of them actually aren't directly policing related matters whatsoever. Now, if we could put that together so that social services, mental health, things like this are all in there, and you exchange data and information, safeguarding and so on, we can actually make Suffolk a much better place. I have to see the policing minister yesterday. We've put in a grant, I think it's for about 300,000 quid, to try and establish this better, closer working relationship with each other, getting rid of the tedium of some of the Data Protection Act, which doesn't half get in the way of a lot of these things. We should be able to keep that data confidential within the confines of the control room. I'm not for a moment saying it should be out there in the public, but let's have a big dose of common sense. I'm convinced with the right will we can actually put things together and make it better. Then it maximises the opportunity for police time to do the policing, getting burglars or whatever it happens to be, and that the people with the right expertise and the right professional skills do the job that they want to do, and then we will all benefit. And that's a long old haul, and once again, politicians have got to get out of the way and make sure it happens. And it's going to be a long old haul. But we have started on that, and I think that's a hugely valuable point you raised, so thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
A lot of it comes down to common sense and compassion. I mentioned it this evening. One of our residents got out one evening, which was actually directing traffic in the carriageway.
Right.
The police involved have compassion. Close the road, call us out blocking rather than the police car. Right way to deal with, very nicely done.
The next one actually was on the news this morning, so it's quite a timely question.
Yeah, well, you might answer some, you might even have the answer on this one. Valuable officer time used to be taken up with paperwork. Civilian staff took some of that workload on releasing officers to get back to the job they are trained to do, i.e. policing. How will the cuts to the civilian staff impact on the time officers spend on administration?
There are very, very few cuts to civilian staff actually. I think it's about 15 or 16 if I remember correctly within local Suffolk local policing. It's all in the Constables County. And I think you raise a very important point there. What we need to do is to try and civilianise as far as possible the work that constabulary does. There's an awful lot of work that goes on that is done by the police staff, and they are a really vital part of the team. It's not them and us, I don't look at that. It's the whole constabulary, volunteer specials, all of these people come together to help do it. So it is about maximising the time the officers spend doing what they joined up to do, which is keeping us safe. And it isn't about parking. I just want to mention that because I'll bring it up next week. One of the frustrations about parking, we are one of only 3 counties in the whole country where parking is a criminal offence. All right? If it is decriminalised, in other words, administered and run parking enforcement by the local authorities, any parking penalties or fines stay here in Suffolk. At the moment, any tickets given by the constabulary, be it PCSO's office or whatever, all the money trundles off to George Osborne. Now this is crazy. We have said repeatedly, and we have got agreement from public sector leaders, to look at the business case for transferring responsibility over. Ipswich already does it, by the way, in Suffolk. Now we have got to get a grip on this, because parking enforcement, we can use technology, you can buy a disc that has got remote transmission, which monitors remotely when you're due to move off your parking place. You actually don't need people to do that, in fact. When we were down here back in July, when it rained, when we had our the Chief and I on the Market Square, you were there already. You know, people driving up the high street the wrong way and so on. Well, we need to put a stop to this, but parking enforcement can be civilianised, and we've just got to get the local authorities to do it. It also includes the county council, because there's the off-street or off-road parking regulations. I don't know what all this red tape is about, but as usual, you can guarantee over here there are lorry loads of that as well. So it will take 18 months to 2 years to do it, but I'm convinced if we work together, we will put a bit of money in to get the scheme up and running. And if we work together across the local government, we can do parking enforcement. That is another example of a huge amount of police time, and people aren't satisfied with the lack of enforcement, but that comes down to choice and priority. Would you rather parking tickets done, or burglary solving, or undercover work? And this is the problem. We have to make a choice, and it's a balance. Nobody's really happy. I bet Andrew would much rather not do parking at all, because that's not what he really wanted to do. Anyone would go around putting stickers on the car. So we've obviously got to have the legal status to do it. So we have got to do that. So police time is crucial. The other thing I'll just say is we've got a major investment coming up in technology, mobile working, so that each patrol car is effectively, I think we call it a Wi-Fi hotspot. So instead of people having to go back to the station, you can load that information remotely. Body worn video cameras will be spending £1 million or thereabouts over the next financial year to actually spread body worn video right across the force. It's not just the cameras, of course you've got to have the data hub or whatever you call it to store the information and so on. And that will be evidence that then can be submitted in court cases and so on. So that will save time and paperwork. Huge amount we've got to do on that, automatic number plate recognition. All of these things mean the guys and girls on the front line can be more productive, and it will take money, and that's part of my job, I suppose, to make sure the funding is available to do that, and I can absolutely assure you it is. And we're very lucky to get some pretty good government grants for that. So police time, I mean, well, and Andrew can speak for himself, got to do everything possible to maximise the time available to get out and deal with crime.
Thank you. Jim's covered it well, unless you've got any specific answers. We've still got civilian investigators who deal with you when you get arrested. We've still got police municipal officers who are civilian, if you like. And we're still going to have mobile investigators who are, again, and they'll be in Haverhill, and you won't see them because they're just going taking statements and things, but they're still IDs and got radios and things. So there'll still be lots of that going on actually. I guess I always say this, and it's quite, if you ever want to come out for a ride along with the police officer, you're more than welcome, and see it from the inside. And I don't say that lightly, I always say that we've got schemes, and we don't even have to, it's not difficult at all really. And if you want to come and sort of see policing first hand and what the challenges are and get some of that more in-depth knowledge, then you're more than welcome to always come out with those. Not a problem at all.
Really interesting. It can be good fun as well, I'm sure, isn't it?
Put me up.
Right.
It really is worthwhile doing it. So you really get an understanding of what comes in, see automatic number plate recognition working, and
You know Stuart Chapman, don't you?
Sorry?
You know Stuart Chapman?
Yeah.
He's my cousin. I've been in the car with him.
Right, the next one, Councillor Roach, do you think that's been covered
I
already?
think we've probably more or less covered all the road policing and stuff, so yeah, I think we've probably done it to death. I'm not happy, but we've done it to death.
Who's got questions?
I'm actually councillor for the borough and town of the East. What is the situation regarding special policemen in this area?
Yes. I mean, you want to answer that one?
yeah, you go first.
Special constabulary, never too late. Special constabulary is key. There are special constables in Haverhill. You've got a special inspector whose name I knew last time, I can't think at the moment. But you've got a special who is brilliant, and he runs the specials tactical support team.
Jerry Kin.
No, he's a customer. No, it's a house. He works for the Ministry of Defence Police, training their constables, and in spare time he's a special with us. I'm so embarrassed. I'll come to me a minute, I'll shout it randomly. But yeah, he's brilliant. You've got a team here, and they actually, you've got the highest trained level of specials in the whole constabulary. They're really quite proud of them. They keep winning awards and everything, nationally and everything. So they can rapidly entry premises, they can deal with their own prisoners, and they're really good. David House, actually. So yeah, absolutely. If anyone wants to be a special, that is, we're definitely recruiting specials. At the moment, some of the specials are turning into regular officers that Tim has talked about. What a brilliant way to get our staff. And actually what that does is that shortens their training period. Respect value for money. It's the same with PCSOs that join. Instead of 18 weeks, it's 15 weeks because they have to learn how to use a radio, for example. So yeah, the answer to this question is there's loads of specials here and we always want more, and it is never too late.
We've got 230 at the moment, and there is a dedicated resource that we've brought in to actually make sure that specials are all volunteers, are properly looked after, trained and equipped. And we're now looking at extra areas of work they can do. I mean, they already do it in traffic and all sorts of other things to help you there, so that will be more. And they really enjoy doing that, and that's really important that the volunteers should enjoy what they're doing as well as making an invaluable contribution to society. So there's a full-time volunteer and specials coordinator who looks after them, Karen Harris, and we are, again, 110% right behind them. It's a very, very good example. Suffolk is particularly good at helping itself when you need to. So wonderful people, they really are. So it's quite a big contingent of the policing family in Suffolk.
Thank you very much. Then the last of the pre-prepared ones, if you like, is Councillor Williams.
Hi, Anthony Williams, Haverhill Town Council. You spoke a little bit about the precept increase at the beginning of the meeting. I just wonder if you could explain to the residents why we're expected to pay more for a service that's being cut so greatly.
Well, I think I've dispelled the theory that it's cut so greatly, in fact, so I'll push back on that if I may, without being disrespectful. Because this is about transforming the police service, and I hope I've made that clear, so I won't go all over that again. The changing pattern of crime-driven patterns of demands, things have got to change. One thing that is, well, there's three things certain enough, aren't they? death, taxes and change. I'm going to say one. But it is true, and we really do need people to understand that. And it is about a realignment and differences. We're actually not cutting because we're increasing the number of officers and so on. Yes, the savings that have been made, I did say at the beginning, it's £7.5 million up until March 2020. But you know, we've got to get away from this idea, you're only so efficient. You don't do this in business. You look at productivity, you don't say we'll keep the expenditure exactly the same. We can actually produce more for less. It's a heck of a change. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's why that's being done. That savings target I did talk about in the beginning, having been reduced, was predicated, I hope I mentioned that, on an increase in the precept of 2%. I personally do not like going around asking people for more taxes. That's not one of my core values. It is a very small amount, and I do fully understand for some people even finding £2 or £3 extra a year can be really difficult. But it is a balance and a choice. The first 2 years I was there, we didn't put it up at all. Okay, so I hope people see that as reasonable. Putting the precept up by that amount and the increase in the tax base, in other words, more houses and economic growth, is actually going to get £1 million a year. And that savings target is predicated on doing that for the next 3 or 4 years. I don't think it's a lot to actually ask, but I will also balance it up by saying there is room, some considerable room for improvement within the constabulary. It has to be run in a more business-like way. We need to do more on restricted and recuperative duties, sickness levels and fitness. Project management for major projects has jolly well got to be sharpened up. So there's a lot to do there. And we are very lucky. The vast majority of the guys and girls in the constabulary work damned hard and give a lot of their extra time for nothing. People need to remember that. We can be more efficient and more effective, and the use of technology will help us to be more productive. And of course that shift in the police time that we've talked about a lot. Now, that's a conversation we need to have right across the whole of the public sector here in Suffolk. Is each agency going to take its fair share of the responsibility? At the moment there is a question mark, so we need a discussion what is the best way to arrange it so we can release the maximum amount of resources for policing. If we can do that, there will then be extra money to do even more on roads policing or whatever else it happens to be. And so it's a complicated subject, and the reason we're asking to pay more at that small amount, it was part of the plan. So I'll hold my hand up and say, yeah, I agree to that, I recommended it. But you then got to think, what are the consequences of not doing it? So if we had a precept freeze, which we could do, then each of the successive years, if you take about £1 million for each year, another 4 or 5 years, that's 100 less officers. So what do you want? Up to you. If you don't like putting it up, or you don't want to have it put up and you want to freeze it, well, that's absolutely fine. That's the choice.
We'd like to keep our PCSOs on our front, front door of our police station.
Well, I'll just tell you something then if you want to mention about PCSOs, all right? So the cost of employing a PCSO to start with, I didn't arrange this, nothing I can do about it. The starting salary, do you know, for a PCSO is slightly more than a qualified constable. A lot of people don't realise that, and I'm not decrying PCSOs, we have got to get the balance. So if you had a fixed amount of money, the same amount of money, would you rather have a PCSO or a constable with all the extra powers they've got? And I think I know what the answer is. What we try to do here is get a balance. It takes 4 years for the pay of a constable, which starts at just under £23,000, to overtake that of a PCSO. A lot of people don't realise that.
Well, it's crime prevention versus dealing with the crime after it's happened, and I think the PCSOs do a damn good job at help prevent crime on the ground, so you could argue that actually it is worth that money.
Well then, all right, that's a choice you could have. If you'd rather have a lot more PCSOs for that amount of money, that obviously is your view. I happen to think we've got the balance right, and it is about getting the balance. Crime prevention is very, very important. You don't necessarily need a PCSO for crime prevention in some areas, do you?
No.
Why can't we get the county council, the constabulary, fire and rescue, various other organisations to come together for one community safety piece of work, and we're working on that at the moment, so that you can give advice to businesses and homes and schools and e-safety and everything for crime prevention, fire prevention, looking at things like mental health. I'm a dementia friend. My sister-in-law is a bit older than me, has got dementia. There are many things we can do together that we have to, and that's what we've got to do. So, yes, I would much rather say here we don't have to put taxes up at all. And I would much rather say we can increase things, but where are you going to get the money from? And it is a balance, and I certainly respect what you said, but I hope I've given you the answer. That's what I think, and it is a balance. And none of these things are dead easy. So that's where we've got to, and I hope, on the whole, warts and all, people will accept that's the way we're going. But I just want to absolutely assure you, Haverhill is really, really important because it is one of our biggest and certainly our fastest growing town in the county.
Okay, thank you. I have to say I'm somewhat stunned at ourselves. We've actually managed to do all the questions and finished it on time, which that doesn't happen much. So thank you very much for everyone for coming on. Thank you particularly for Tim and Andrew coming up to answer those questions. I'm sure there would be other questions people would like to ask, but I'm sure you've got your card or something like that.
Yeah, I'll leave this here. Anybody wants to get in touch, I have one mobile. I don't carry 2 or 3 around like some people. And you're very welcome to use it. The email address and the office numbers there. I'll leave them all there so if other people at the end of the time.
Thank you very much.
Can I just say, it seemed like we've sort of called you people up. We haven't. We are really, really appreciative of the service that we get from the police.
You talk for yourself.
That's very kind.
You haven't. And it's not, but we are obviously concerned that we get the best service that we can.
Look, I'm more than happy. I've never said to anybody I would refuse to come and meet them. And you know that, if you like, that is part of my role. It's a very honoured and privileged role. But hearing it first hand from people is far better than emails or letters or hearing it third hand. I would much rather come up here and face the music. It's all been a very courteous meeting. You've got some strong views. I don't agree with absolutely everything, but I'm sure you don't agree with everything I've said. But that is how we operate over here, isn't it? And that is the Suffolk way of doing it. For God's sake, go and meet people, hear what it is. And that's why we have all our public meetings. And they are worth their weight in gold, as is this been. It really has. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.